pure experiences.
Welcome to the Pure Experiences Podcasts. The individual mind, although it appears to be segregated, resides in a sea of minds, all present right here and right now. It is always influencing other minds and is being influenced by them. Supernatural influences are the ones where the source is non-physical. It's always our own tendencies that allow other minds to influence us. Since a mind cannot remain unaffected by influences, it is useful to know which influences are beneficial for us and which ones are not.
Today we are going to discuss the subject of supernatural influences on the mind. The existence is one whole interconnected nothing, and the mind is an event, a happening in this existence, which is also one whole and interconnected thing. One interesting happening in this one mind is individuality, or a process in the mind that isolates a chunk of memory and draws imaginary boundaries around it. This is the process of individualization. This is a stage in the growth and evolution of the mind. Although this individual mind feels or thinks that it is separated from everything there is, this is only an ignorance. There is only an illusion of separation from the whole of the mind, the universal mind. The universal mind, you can imagine, is like a sea of memory, a sea of structures which are impressing their own patterns on each other. Impression is influence. So memory is a structure that is easily influenced by another structure, another memory. Memory is highly malleable, highly plastic thing. Anything that goes across the memory forms impressions in it. That's why we call it a memory. An individual mind is a chunk of the universal memory where this process of keeping it separate from other influences is going on. This is amazing because this keeps the memory intact. It keeps the structure from eroding away due to other memories, other influences around it, other happenings that are going on around it. And so the main objective of the process of individuality is to protect itself, protect the structure, which it calls as I, the individual. So the individual mind is an event in the universal mind, and it is doing the act of separation, trying to not be dissolved into the all. In other words, it is trying to survive. Survival is the only game for the mind, for the individual mind. And there are dedicated processes that keep this separation and illusion of separation alive. We also call them the egoic processes of the mind. Even though it looks like that the individual mind has successfully separated from the sea that is around it, it is a false notion. It is a false idea in the mind. It is not really separated. It cannot separate. Just like the space in the jar is not separated from the space outside it. Just because there is structure in between, it is not possible for the individual mind to be separated from the universal mind. It is not possible for the wave to separate itself from the sea. It is a part of the sea. Even if it thinks it is separate, even if the illusion is very, very strong and convincing, the wave is wave. It does not become something other than the ocean. In the same way, the individual does not become separate from the universal, although there are boundaries. And these boundaries are more or less an attempt to keep the individuality intact, to survive in the chosen form. The form can be anything from inert matter to the highest kind of enlightened mind. They are all forms, and one of the interesting forms is a human form, a human mind, which will be our focus naturally. But every other mind is doing the same, playing the game of separation, drawing imaginary boundaries and acting within those boundaries. This is how the natural process of evolution happens. Without the separation, there will be a homogeneous sea of memories, everything being connected to everything else. There won't be any structure. It will be a blur of memories. So it is not true, it is an illusion, but it is important for the play to happen. It's all a play. Since memory itself is defined by impressions or the influences from other patterns, one can say that the mind originates from influences. The mind originates from influences that form on the memory from other patterns. Once a stable impression is formed, the defense mechanisms evolve and protect it. But that is also an illusion. It is also an unsuccessful action, because the influences keep influencing the memory. Although, because now there is a structure that tries to isolate that memory from everything else, and the changes are very slow and not so drastic, not wiping away like a sand castle being wiped away by incoming wave on the beach. The slow change, the change can be degradation, or the change can be constructive, evolution, progress, more complexity. Depends on how the change is happening. We have already discussed the whole evolution of the mind, layers of the mind, structure of the mind, processes of the mind and all, a great amount of detail already, so I won't repeat it here. We'll go directly to the matter of influences. Depending on how strong the mind is, how nicely fortified the mind is, the influences have an effect more or less on the mind. So the first thing to keep in mind is minds are not isolated. There is an imaginary boundary between various minds. We call them individuals. Although they are totally connected, there is this pretending that I am here and you are there. There is this pretending that I am the individual. This is how the game is being played. The second thing to keep in mind is all the minds are being influenced by all other minds and everything there is in the universal mind. We are not free from external influences, if you want to call them external. There are so many influences, infinite varieties of it. So it is very difficult to study what is really influencing this mind. Because as an individual, I am interested in studying what is happening in my mind. What is influencing it? If it is not totally isolated from the sea of minds, then what is really happening there? I am interested in this. So it is almost impossible to see how many kinds are there, how many influences are impinging on this memory that I call as I. So one can do a little bit of approximation within the limits of one's knowledge, try to classify the kinds of influences based on our own direct experience or logical deductions, or from the experiences of the others whom you trust and the teachings of the guru or the teacher whom you trust. This is what I have done. This is what I'll try to present now. And this is an opinion most of the time, not to be confused with truth. Your experience is your truth. Whatever I say is only a pointer to show you where to search for the truth. So I have classified the influences into roughly 10 categories, which I'm going to explain now in short. And these I'm calling as supernatural influences on the mind. Obviously, there are natural influences that happen on the mind. And why do we call the influences as supernatural or natural? Is a sign of our own ignorance. That is a sign that we do not know what is influencing my mind, and therefore we say that it is supernatural. It is not impossible to know what is influencing the mind, and therefore this partition of influences into two, supernatural and natural, is just for convenience, or just to start our journey in the world of influences. So I'll start like this. Everybody knows the natural influences that happen. We don't even pay attention to, because it is a part of our life. When a child is born, well, everything influences. It's a clear slate. So each and everything has an effect on the mind. The first thing that influences the child is his own mother, father, family, the objects in the room, the toys, the sounds, the smells, everything, the general environment there. Because of these impressions, the memories are formed in the child, and with the help of genetic processes, the personality of the child is created. So things like the language and behavior and culture and styles of the people around the child gets impressed on that clear memory. Individual is formed. An individual is never born. The individual is formed throughout lifetime, especially during the early childhood. What impresses on the mind of a child is therefore very, very important. Childhood experiences determine the rest of the life. Very few people know that, and children grow up like they usually grow up, like you grew up in your family. No, nothing special is done to create an individual. Whatever others are doing, whatever the society is doing, we do the same to our children. Send them to the school, send them to the teachers, or we educate them, we enculture them into something which everybody is. We discourage the individuality, we discourage the differences. We want the child to be as uniformly as others as possible. That is what we call as a normal child. If it's too dumb, we don't like it. Too bright, we don't really like it. And then we try to silence those differences by discouraging them through punishment or insults. And the child quickly learns, in order to survive, he needs to behave in a specific way, think in a specific way, and speak in a specific way. So the job of the society and parents and teachers is to kill the individuality, iron it out, make it normal. But this is actually always a failure. Fortunately, the child gets influenced by many other things as the child starts going out of his house, meets other people, comes across books, movies, different cultures, so on. And then depending on how strong that mind is, that mind gets encultured in different ways, cultivates itself in different ways. This is the freedom that the mind has. Sometimes it is very drastic change. The individual changes totally when he or she comes in contact with other experiences that influence that mind strongly. Some do not change. Whatever is formed in childhood continues for the 90 years of their lives, and they die in the same way they were born. But there are people who change, who grow, who progress. And there are people who fall also, but we are not interested in those. A really influential life is the life of a person who changes as he grows through his life. Life is a series of influences, you can say. So these are the natural influences which happen to everyone. I need not go into the details of that. What influences the mind? Starting from a stone, butterfly, honeybee, dogs, cats, animals, to people, family, friends, everything that the senses come in contact with influence the mind. So you can see, if you read a book, you are influenced by the book. The writer of that book makes a home in your mind. Your all thoughts are then biased by whatever you have read in the book, as if that your mind is now hijacked by the writer through the medium of the book, and now it is making you think in a certain way, in a way that is written in the book. When you watch a movie, at least for that day, you are influenced by the movie. Especially the teenagers, they take on the persona of the actor in the movie. Can be any actor, can be the hero or the villain, anybody. And they tend to act, speak, desire, think like the person in the movie. If the movie is good, if the movie is influential. Some people are influenced by politicians, religious leaders, their friends, their families, their parents, whatnot, the cults and groups, even the office environment, their bosses, and in society, by society in general. So everything influences the mind. So the kind of environment we live in, and how clean that environment is, whether it is dirty, filthy, smells of poverty, or whether it is clean, nice, and affluent, in all. And these effects are registered in the mind. All shapes the mind. And the most important influence that comes from the environment is via other minds, which I'm going to call the embodied mind, because these minds are acting through a body. And since we are in a shared experience, these minds influence my mind through their bodies, mainly by their behavior and their speech, how they treat me and what they talk to me. So this is the major factor under the category of natural influences, that people influence us the most. So once you identify this, once you start waking up to what you are and what the mind is, you will notice the presence of people for the first time in your life, not as people, but as influencers. Your mind will be attracted to some, and your mind will be repelled by some of them. And you will find most of the time you are repelled by people, because now you are aware of what that mind contains. And it is unfortunate that most of the minds that are embodied, they contain nothing but negativity. Fear, anger, jealousy, greed, selfishness, violence, hate, and all kinds of negative thoughts. They speak negative, they behave negative, they are themselves motivated by anger and fear, and they will cause this kind of influence on your mind and transmit it into your mind. So as we start waking up, as we start becoming more aware, we distance ourselves from the mind, other minds, other embodied minds. Stronger your mind is, the greater will be distance, and the lesser will be the influence. Not everybody is so fortunate, and therefore most of the people, they fall prey to the negativity that is around them. Only a yogi or a jnani, or the one who studies their own mind and sees all kinds of influences that are entering the mind, even though I always thought that I am separate, I am me, nothing can influence me. That illusion is broken now, and we see all kinds of we are a product of influences. We see it now. And then, because of the awareness, we take steps to stop and control the negative influences. At least we start from there. And so you will find that the seeker isolates himself or herself from everyone, mixes with others very less, speaks to others very less, is almost a social, introverted person within his own mind. This is the first thing you will notice about any meditator or spiritual seeker. They don't like people. Not because they are bad, but because they don't want that kind of influence entering their peaceful and now pure mind. You see, the purer the mind is, the more noticeable the influence is. You can take the metaphor of the clear water. If the water is muddy, you can add anything in it. You won't even notice any change in the water. As the water gets clearer, even a few drops of mud make it muddy, make it unclear. If it is very, very pure, you can see even a single particle of dust floating in it. This is what happens to a seeker who is purifying their mind. A single negative thought jumps out, becomes a big deal for that seeker. And so they are instantly repelled by it. Don't want to be in such kind of place. They don't want to be in such kind of atmosphere with the company of such people. Prefer being alone, or if possible, they stay in the company of other seekers or teachers, spiritual environment. Because survival is needed, you will need to interact with others, you will need to interact with society, work, do a job, do a business, earn your bread and butter. So a seeker minimizes that interaction, minimizes the needs, and so lives with as less influences as possible. And on the other hand, the seeker will try to be influenced by the more enlightened minds, more pure minds, is attracted to somebody who is very, very pure mentally and spiritually. This is the shift that happens in the life of a seeker. An ordinary person, is a slave of influences. Anything and anybody can influence them. So even a TV is the great influencer for an ordinary person. Whatever is on TV, that person wants to become like that, wants to get that thing, wants to conform himself or herself to how the people are on the TV. This is what I mean when I say slave of influences. Their life is determined by whatever influences them, whatever their senses are in contact with. So this forms the category of natural influences that we can see in front of our eyes. What is influencing me? Now the other category is non-sensory means. The influences that arrive in the mind through non-sensory means, which, because an average person does not know, even an average seeker does not know the origin of that influence, we tend to call it supernatural, something magical. It is not supernatural, it is simply our ignorance that we don't know it. And to be honest, it is very difficult to know the source from where it is coming. In the natural case, in case of influence of my natural means, you can see the other individual, you can see the other body and mind. You can see the object through which it is being transmitted, whether it is movie, book or TV or internet or videos or the audios like this one. This audio is nothing but influence on your mind. We know from where it came if we pay attention. Otherwise we don't really pay attention and unconsciously influenced by everything. But there is a possibility to know. Supernatural influences is very difficult. The source is not located here and there because mind is non-local. So you can say that it is coming from a mind. Where is that mind? It's impossible to know because it's not located anywhere. That mind is here and now. That mind is in the universal mind. There is no space and locations in the mind. Spaces and locations are illusions of the physical world. So the influences are here and now. Whether you want to believe it or not, this will be your experience that whenever such an influence comes, of which you cannot locate a location or a point of emission, you won't be able to deduce anything about where is that influence coming from? So we have a separate language for spiritual phenomena, occult phenomena, which is roughly based on our physical language of the world. But among the seekers, it is understood when I say that the influence is coming from another mind. They know what it means. It simply means that the influence is known, not the influencer. It is very difficult to know the origin, at least for an ordinary seeker, at least for a beginner in the field. And let us assume this stage, but this is not a total beginner, because a total beginner will not even know that there was an influence. So on the second stage, maybe you will start seeing that something has influenced my mind. Otherwise not. If there is enough awareness, you will see the influences. Otherwise, they go unnoticed. They're covered up by me, I, the individual, the person, the identity. I did this, I thought this, and I want this, I desire this. This I covers up everything that is supernatural to make it natural. So the next kind of influence that comes into our mind is also from embodied minds, because they are the closest to us. We have a contact, a connection to the embodied minds, and can be parents, can be family, can be relatives, can be friends, or anybody you come in contact with. So these are the embodied minds. But the influence comes through non-sensory means. It happens without them talking or behaving in any way. So those who are very, very sensitive, we also call them the empaths. When they sit near somebody, they are influenced by the contents of that mind, by the other mind. Even if that person is not doing anything at all. Sometimes simply looking at the face of that person is enough to be influenced by whatever is inside that mind. So these are non-sensory means. Although there can be sensory clues here and there, and then that is, we can delude ourselves through the non-verbal communication that what this person is thinking and get influenced in that way. But that is not what I mean. When, let us say, you are in one city and your partner is in another city, you can still be influenced by the mind of that partner. It can be a positive influence also. It can be negative one also. It can be any influence. Simply that partner remembers you, recalls something in great detail, and there is an emotion in you here, even if you are thousands of miles away. Let us say a child is in distress, is crying in the school. A mother knows it from sitting in her own home. There will be a negative emotion in the mother. So this is also called telepathic influences. Telepathy is misunderstood as being a transmission of messages between the mind. Now you can roughly say that this is a message, the child is sending a message, but it is not language, it is not symbols, it is very gross feelings and emotions. That is all being sent, if you want to use that terminology. But it's an influence of some kind. So not only the fear, anger, love, hate can be sent, you can send knowledge and information this way, which is very, very rare. This is what the real telepathy is, sending of information between the two minds. It is an influence of some kind. But it's always easy to send something which belongs to the lower layers. It's more stronger. So those who are very sensitive will receive the influences from embodied minds or other people, other animals, and so on through non-sensory means. This is now falls in the supernatural, isn't it? So, but and only thing is, because we think I am separate from others, I cannot be influenced by others. Because of this ignorance, we think that this is supernatural. And some people will say it is superstition. Supernatural is nothing but superstition, blind belief. So I encourage you to experiment. Take some time out to find out the truth. Or look at your own life. If you have grown up a little bit, you have experience of your life behind you, and check whether there were any such experiences in your life. If nothing at all, then that's probably superstition, who knows. But those who have the experience, they know that there is such kind of influence. So when you are practicing something which clears up your mind, which purifies your mind, then sitting next to people becomes a problem. So physical isolation is needed. Or you need to go and take refuge in an ashram or some really clean place. The clean here is not physical cleanliness, it is also mental cleanliness. And there needs to be an atmosphere of positivity and positive minds around you in order for you to even exist peacefully. So you will find that there is a distinct change of atmosphere when you are in nature, when you are with Mother Nature, when you are in hills, trees with birds, creatures, water bodies, waterfalls, rivers, seashore and wilderness. What happens? Now I need not tell you, the person becomes peaceful, the person talks less, the person gets introverted. When he or she is in nature, the person thinks about something beautiful, something greater than the pettiness of ordinary life. It is called a retreat. Nowadays it's called a picnic, but anything that purifies your mind is good. So you retreat, go into the lap of Mother Nature, get drenched with the positivity that the Mother Nature offers. Now when you come back from your picnic, as you enter the city, you will notice change in atmosphere, and it can be sensory, non-sensory, who cares, but there will be a change. You will notice uneasiness, you will notice impatient running that is happening there. You will notice that a fear, an atmosphere of fear, anger and competition as soon as you enter the city. Everybody is running around like mad and trying to be bigger than the other fellow, trying to get more and more, and trying to earn more and more, trying to be superior, trying to dominate others, trying to kill others, and so on. It is a center of madness. It is suddenly your mental experience transformed into anxiety and stress as soon as you enter the city. So many people don't like cities. Many people don't like the solitude and Mother Nature, don't like the solitude and natural surroundings because they get bored, because the mind is addicted to influences, and mind derives its existence out of reactions to the influences. If nothing negative is on the TV, you change the channel and find a news that you can react to. If there's a boring things in the newspaper, you get something which is more exciting and more intoxicating. Go and watch a violent movie so that your ego gets something to react to. And this is, addiction to negativity. More murders, more blood, more hate there is in the movie, the more popular it becomes. Have you seen a movie where there is all love and goodness and light and it broke the records? No. It's impossible. So in general, the human mind is addicted to influences, especially the negative kind of influences. And therefore the seeker does not like this kind of life. Once you taste the peace, you won't want to go there. So this can happen, the atmosphere can impinge on the mind through non-sensory means simply by being in that atmosphere. You don't need to even act there. You need to simply go there. You'll find that sometimes if you go to a temple or a place where some special preparations have been made to influence your mind, a temple is a place to influence your mind, you will spontaneously enter into a peaceful state or meditation there. You will enter a spiritual state there. But unfortunately, hardly anything left now. Temples have become the same like a shopping mall. Same anxiety, stress, and fear and anger is there in temple also. So we'll discuss that later on. But this is the influence that the mind gets from the non-sensory beings. Now let's go deeper. There is a third kind of influence, supernatural influence, that comes from directly from the disembodied minds. The minds that are not currently incarnated in the body. Just like there are natural influences that come from embodied minds, it is the parallel of that, but from disembodied minds. And normally we don't see them because they are minds, not sensory things, not objects. And so it's difficult to find out what influenced my mind. And if you're not aware, the influence turns into an action. Now, how do we know that there are such influences? Again, through indirect experience, experiment. It cannot be proven, cannot derive a formula for that. Cannot point a telescope of some kind. Look, this mind is influencing your mind. It is disembodied mind. Although I don't know, probably it is also possible through mental instruments. And some people may detect what kind of mind is influencing another mind. But this is influence from disembodied minds. And there are three kinds of minds, which actually there are a variety of minds, but I've decided to call them the lower minds, the ordinary minds, and the higher minds. These three kinds of minds, just like there are three kinds of people, the lowly people, the ordinary and innocent people, and the more influential and positive people. You see, there are disembodied minds of the same categories. So when the influence is from the lower minds, it is almost always negative. Why can that happen? It can happen if you have the same thoughts, if you are also lowly, if you are also criminal mind, if you are also negative. If the negativity is filled to the brim in your mind and it starts attracting the disembodied active minds, which are trying to act according to their tendencies. And again, it is not that the disembodied mind will send a message to you in English that please go and do such and such bad thing. I want you to do this. It is not like this. You will never get like this. Only because your tendencies and that mind's tendencies, they match. Let us say you are angry, and that mind, that disembodied mind is also angry. It has a tendency to become angry very quickly, and then there can be a lot of reasons for it, past lives and so on. And the influence is transferred to your mind because of resonance. It is not a signal that comes through space. It is a mental influence. It is a metaphysical influence. Actually, we don't have the language. I don't have the language to tell you. But it is stupidity to assume that that lower mind is somewhere out there or below the ground somewhere, and it is sending signals to your mind. No, this is not possible, you see. There is no space, there is no location in the mental field. It is here and now. All the lower, ordinary, higher, whatever minds are here and now in contact with your mind. Only the composition of your mind, the contents of your mind decide whether you become influenced by them, but whether you become influenced by certain kind of mind. So that's why we simply say that the influence has happened, and because we cannot see from where, it is said that it's coming from a disembodied mind. And there will be certain signs that it is not my thought. It is not like me. It is not really my behavior or my speech that has happened. Sometimes it is so clear that your language will change, your behavior patterns will change, your mental environment will completely change. There will be alien thoughts in your mind, which you don't know how they got there. And as you must have guessed, this is called a case of possession. So a possession is an influence by another mind. And you will be amazed to find out that almost every mind, every human mind, gets possessed. And I call it a mild possession actually. And this is simply transfer of an influence from one mind, the disembodied mind, to that person's mind. And we do not notice it because of the lack of the knowledge. Because this mind is hiding behind the shell of personality, the shell of I. So the person does something stupid and says, I did it. It is total darkness inside, does not know what caused it. I did it because I willed it. And that is the ignorant expression of such a mind. So those who have the eyes to see will see that there is a sudden change in the mind and then the body started acting in a certain way. This is what they see. And this is a sign of influence from a disembodied mind. And if the actions are negative, if the person goes and kills somebody, becomes a serial killer, or hates somebody, or is kind of stupid really, and then it goes away. We either call it mental illness, or we simply call that person as a criminal-minded person, and we lock them up. Actually, we don't want to deal with these people. We don't know why they are doing it. There is everything. They are in a rich country. They are educated. They have good food. They have clothing. They have everything, but they behave in a very stupid way, very negative way, and we do not know why it is so. You see, it is simply the tendency of the mind, and the mind is receiving influences from other minds. Actually, it will be kind of irresponsible to quickly export the cause of bad behavior of somebody to the astral plane somewhere coming from a disembodied mind. Well, do not simply jump into that conclusion. When all the normal, ordinary reasons are eliminated, then whatever remains is supernatural. It is extraordinary. When the ordinary has been eliminated through logic and reason. So it is very rare, but mild positions turn into extreme positions. And we call them by various names. We call them spirits, we call them demons, and so on. And then there are so many names in various cultures and so many stories, and you must have witnessed a few of the extreme kind of positions. The mild positions, everybody has witnessed, but they don't know they are witnessing the mild position. You go to a bar and get drunk, and now the mind is open to all kinds of influences because the safeguards, the fort is down. And so whatever you speak, think, and mostly the disembodied minds, they will leave an impression on your mind, even though it may not get converted into action immediately. That impression will remain in your memory, and it will match your tendencies. And so you will never notice. You will say, it is my tendency to hate such and such person, and now a thought of killing that person is coming in my mind, especially after I got drunk. It is natural that I'll think so when my guards are down. And we may not notice, and who knows, it is probably me. But if that is not your nature, you are angry with somebody, but you are not violent, you are not criminal. And if you have planned a murder, let us say, if you have planned some kind of robbery or some other crime, or even, hate speech, or something like that, insult, then it is very much possible that a tendency from the disembodied world has made its way into your mind and influenced your mind. So if this keeps happening, it becomes your own part. Now remember that there is no individual. It is an accumulation of influences. So I call it, as soon as I call it me, mine, it has become solid in the mind that I am like this. I am the one who hates. I am the one who insults. And it leaves a very bad taste. You don't know why it is there. Why you do that thing again and again. Why you insult somebody. Why you speak like this. Why you are angry all the time. You don't know. And that is a clear sign that your mind is not in control of anybody, you see. It has become like a public toilet. Everybody comes and deposits something there. Your guards are not up. The individual mind is not strong enough. So the deadly combination here is as a weak mind full of ignorance and also having the seeds of negativity. Small anger becomes big anger. Even though all your friends are good, even though your family is loving, even though you're earning a good salary and you're okay, but as soon as you wake up, you find mind is filled with negativity. You want to go and slap everybody. You want to shout and insult, scream. That is something to notice. If I am not like this, why is this happening? And now you can start suspecting influence from the lower disembodied minds. So if the mind is weak, if the seeds are there, and the other disembodied minds that get hold of this organism. Now let us see it from this perspective, that the disembodied mind has no means to act because it's a mind, but it is transmitting. Let us use that language. It is influencing. Its influences are spreading around in the mental space. So as soon as it finds a receiver, well, that receiver starts activating and acting in a way that is characteristic of that disembodied mind. And if that disembodied mind finds out, there is intelligence there, finds out that, okay, this organism is now behaving as per my wishes. So, the connection becomes stronger and the mild position turns into total position. That means that disembodied mind has taken hold of this organism which belonged to some other mind. This is what we call as possession, taking control of one's body. So the stronger the disembodied mind is, the greater is the control. And the original owner is kicked out. The original owner becomes disembodied now. It's lost somewhere. So there are probably many cases. Probably we don't notice many of them. Probably many are locked up and killed. Because if such a strong negativity gets hold of a mind, you can imagine someone will kill that body. It used to happen a lot in the old days where everybody carried a weapon or a sword and somebody misbehaved, their head was cut off, handed over to them. The tolerances were not great. Nowadays, we have become kind of weak. We don't take such extreme actions. And then we have given up our own security in the hands of organizations like governments, military and police. So they do whatever they want to do, but the cases are still there. So how not to get possessed? It's very easy. Do not cultivate the seeds of negativity. The lowliness should be thrown out. For that, you will need to evolve out of the animalistic tendencies that are in everybody. Do not water those seeds. Water the better ones, the positivity in you. It does not mean erecting a firewall around you. It's not possible. Even if you can delude yourself that you're protected. But the real protection is changing your mind, transformation of the mind, transmutation of the lower into higher, raising of vibrations. And now the tendencies of the lower minds, they do not see you. They are unable to affect this mind, and so you disappear from their radar. So this is the occult language that I am using, but you can understand now. The same thing happens on the material plane, and you must have witnessed all those things. Somebody wants you to take drugs or go and rob a bank and all, and insults you and enjoys the irritation that happens in you as a result of that influence. And the more you cooperate, the more they will trouble you. If you laugh and joke and disappear from that place and do not interact with that person again, or keep it very, very formal and straightforward, or you avoid the person, don't see his face again, then that troubling, irritating fellow loses interest in you. He goes and finds some other low-hanging fruit to transmit his negative influence and enjoy from that whatever he gets from. So you must have seen this behavior, and minds are mind. Simply because they are holding a body does not mean that they are different. Simply because the person is dead does not mean that the mind has changed. So disembodied minds, they do exactly the same. If you don't serve them, they will stop troubling you. Actually, there are people who will do the exactly opposite of what I'm saying. They will go and serve the negative minds. Why? Because the same negativity is in them, and they see the more negative mind as more powerful than themselves, and they will go and offer the offerings, the sacrifices to the demonic powers because they are greedy and wish to have those kind of powers. So the like attracts like, so it is all allowed in the universal mind. You see, the universal mind does not differentiate between good and bad. But we as humans, we have this discretion, we have this discrimination, what is good for us, what is bad for us. So I'm not saying don't do that, you're free to do whatever you want. And then that lower mind, now which is difficult to call it lower because it's so powerful, it will get hold of your mind. It will act through your body. It will get its things done in the physical world because that is the tendency of that mind. It is looking for a vehicle and you become the vehicle. And in return, you think you get something, you get the power and all. But in return, you have become a slave of that greater mind, of the demonic mind. It is possible to do that. You can sell your soul if you want. But the ultimate outcome is loss of the individual. The individual merges in that group mind, and you will find out these demonic minds, if they are very powerful, they are a collection of minds. They are a group mind. So I have done a little bit of explanation of the group minds in one of the podcasts. So you can listen to the group minds. Actually, no mind is an individual mind. They're all group minds. All of them. You and me, all are group minds. There's an illusion of separation. So just like I'm a part of some group mind, well, you can choose to become a part of a demonic mind if that is what attracts you most. Many people do that, although it is rare. So mild position is very common. People don't take notice of it. It is like mild sickness, mild infection by bacteria, viruses. You feel a little bit bad, and but next day you get up and do your daily routine, the daily meal. But same way, the mind gets influenced by the mental viruses, cause sickness. Sickness may appear as mental or physical or both, and then it goes away. We don't pay attention. We think that it's me, something has happened. A mild position has happened, mild influence from the disembodied minds have happened. If you are very sensitive, you will notice, otherwise you won't. You will notice the extreme positions which happen from extremely powerful minds, negative minds, but very rare, very, very rare. Now we come to the fourth one, which is influences from ordinary disembodied minds. And these ordinary people are your dead relatives, your dead friends, dead animals, dead pets, and just ordinary passing entities. They are minding their own business most of the time. Sometimes you open up to those minds, and then influence filters into your mind. Now, what can be that influence? It can be very petty. It can be something simple. For example, your grandmother did not like a certain kind of perfume, and you go to the shop and you smell that perfume, and since you have a connection with your grandmother, and there will be a transmission of influence from your mind to the dead, disembodied grandmother's mind. From there, a reaction will be transmitted back, which is, oh, I don't like this, stay away from this. And then your behavior will be modified there. You will not buy that perfume. I'm giving you a very ordinary example because this is what ordinary influences are like. But if you have a connection with ordinary disembodied minds, they have a say in your day-to-day life. even if they are gone. Sometimes the action will not happen instantly, just like in the case of lower minds, but it will leave an imprint on your memory. For example, your grandfather was a spiritual seeker and he did not eat meat. So you think about your grandfather, you read his books or his diaries and all, and you go to sleep. The next day there is a meat cooked by your mother, and you don't want to touch it for some reason, and you say, because I got influenced by the memories of my grandfather. He did not like meat, and so I also feel the same. Probably that is the case. It can be explained like this, but another possibility is the connection has happened with the mind, memories of your grandfather, the causal body there somewhere, and the influence in a few days or a few hours has manifested now. So these things, they happen. We don't notice them because we are not so aware. Awareness is the key if you want to notice such things. So these are the ordinary disembodied minds, and they can affect things. For example, you are interested in sports, well, and the disembodied mind, let us say, have a connection with you and is also interested in that kind of sport, and you will feel a presence whenever you watch that kind of sport or you're playing it. Something like this can happen. It is nothing but an influence. You can see the body as a pinhole through which the mind is watching the physical world, and you call it my mind. But if you have a connection with the other minds, which you have, you don't realize that there is oneness there. So you think only I am watching through this pinhole of senses. But sometimes the other minds, they get a chance. When your mind is open enough, when your mind is resonating with the same thing, the other separated, disembodied mind gets a glimpse of the physical world through your senses, the pinhole of this body. And this connection happens, and the reaction happens, and the influences happen, and so on. So they are not harmful. You can sense them sometimes. But if the mind is too much open to all these influences, then the behavior of that person is erratic, is governed by so many minds, even if they are ordinary and not harmful. They are not doing it intentionally, but because there is a nice connection between them and this body, this organism, the actions of that organism, they look like very erratic. It changes very quickly from one personality to another, one kind of speech to another, one kind of mood to another, so on. Now our own mind is kind of very big, very dynamic, so it is all mixed up in the activity of the mind. You cannot differentiate from where all these thoughts, desires and actions are coming from. So if we think that there is this one mind which is governing, controlling this one body, it is far from truth. The whole of the group is actually controlling this body. There can be a greater influence from one particular set of memories, which is what I am calling as I, and others are prevented from using the same body, but it's far from true. It's all the minds influencing this body. Now this never happens all the time, or you can say the influences are so small that cannot detect it, but sometimes it becomes really obvious for those who are extremely sensitive. Then the other kind of influence is coming from the higher minds. What do I mean by higher minds? The minds that are evolved beyond human. And they can be your ancestors, they can be immediate parents, they can be other dead people and all, but they have somehow gone beyond the human lives. Probably they are awaiting another incarnation and simply looking for an opportunity to incarnate in a favorable place So if you are in a spiritual mood, if you are in a meditation, if you are reading a nice positive book, if you are reading some good poetry, uplifting book, watching a good movie and so on, you are in satsang and such activities, or you are with Mother Nature, and then these minds can sense your mood and they get a chance to influence your mind. The influence is positive. The influence is always uplifting. The influence feels like shivers, blissful shivers in your body. So many people must have gotten this experience, and these are the good influences. You see, influence does not always mean bad, but now you're resonating with the higher minds, and you get a sense of peace, love, and positivity from that, pleasure also. So these are the influences from the higher minds, and we say that practice made me feel like this, or my meditation makes me feel like this, or I feel presence when I do such and such occult practice, tantric practice, yoga practice. You will attribute it to that practice or the things that you are doing, but we forget that we are not alone. This practice will invite the entities from the other side, and you can see feel the presence, and you can see the influence that these entities have on your own mind. So what a seeker is doing is trying to get that influence, trying to get that kick of positivity from the other side. And around this are established the rituals, which you call the religious practices. They are an invitation to those who are higher than us to come and influence us. This is what we call guidance, to guide us, to bias our mind so that we take a proper action, an action which we are incapable of even thinking. So as usual, we plant the seed. The seed is in form of intention. Just like you can have a seed, an intention of doing something bad, hating or harming. You can have a good intention also. We have this freedom. So we can plant a good intention. For example, the intention to know more, the intention to let go of the negativity, the intention to be happy, peaceful, joyful. You can plant those seeds, and they will be influenced because they will attract the same tendencies from the higher minds in the mental plane, and the minds will transmit their influence in your mind. So how does this influence appear in our life? It usually appears in the form of an insight. That's why we call it guidance. You make the intention, positive intention, you sleep, and you meditate on it, you spend your week intending, thinking about it. One day you wake up and there is an idea in your mind. There is an insight in your mind. Everything is crystal clear in your mind. You suddenly know what to do. If you're searching for an answer, you know. Or even if you don't want anything, there will be a mental atmosphere of peace, bliss, happiness. You will smile that day. You will spread that around in the physical atmosphere also. This can happen. So we are actually inviting, we are looking for such influences. There are ways to do that, but this is the surest and simplest. Plant the positive seeds. Plant that. Seed that which you want, that kind of positivity. Be open to the influences. Close yourself to the negative ones. Say, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. And the negative influences will go away because you are not expressing them. So and the energy of that negative mind is wasted on you. So they will find somebody else, something else to do. And the more open you are to the positive minds, just like in case of negativity, the connection will grow stronger. Now, this time it will be a positive connection. Again, you don't need to believe me. Say these things are experimental in nature. This needs to be your own experience. My words are going to mean nothing, isn't it? So when we are seeking, when we are on a spiritual path, The influences, they come quickly and more effectively, and those disembodied minds now reveal themselves sometimes, if sometimes they do not, and they appear to us as our guides. They appear to us in the form of a guru, and there will be some very clear-cut instructions sometimes. You need to do this, you need to read this, you need to, and so on. And it is never in form of instruction. It is always in a form of motivation. There will be a desire in you to do that specific thing. It is simply the influence of that desire which is in the mind of that guide or your guru. And you don't have to believe me, you can do that kind of experiment. You can have this intention, very strong intention of being guided by a suitable guide, by a suitable teacher. Let us say you are in a country where gurus are rare. If you are in India, it's opposite. You can go and find a guru in any street here. But let us say you are in a country which is spiritually poor, and you still have an interest in acquiring knowledge and growing and evolving. You can take advantage of the disembodied minds that are waiting to guide. Their energy is such that they want to influence a seeker, a spiritual seeker. They want to transmit the truth. And since they cannot do in a direct way because they are disembodied, they will do this by influencing your mind. So be open to that kind of influence. And the more open you are, the stronger will be connection. So if you are interested in a specific path, before reading the books of that path, before doing your practice related to that path, you can simply invoke the guide, the guru. Don't need to know the name, and the minds don't have a name. You see, bodies have a name. If you want, you can address them by name. They don't care. All you need to do is transmit this intention of being guided, being helped in your practice. It can be any practice, you see. It need not be only the path of knowledge. It need not be only the introspection. It can be any kind of meditation. It can be your energetic paths and so on. If you know the specific thing, you can say, yes, please heal this specific thing. This problem I have, please help me to solve this problem, and so on. And you can simply say, please do this for me. I don't know how to do. You can be like a child also, and then they will take care of it. And this now borderline faith, isn't it? It's borderline religion now, but I'm asking you to experiment, not to blindly believe it. If you don't get any kind of guidance, don't worry. Probably your mind needs to purify that. It needs to open up a lot. These things, they take time. If you're very gifted, you have this mediumistic tendencies, that's what they call it in occult, then it can happen in one day. But if you have spent most of your life in materialistic tendencies, then the mind is already closed. It is like a coconut, you need to break it open, and it will take some time. The erosion of ignorance may happen in many years. So if you experiment today and you don't get a result tomorrow, well, that's kind of stupidity to conclude that there is no such thing as influence from the higher minds. It may take many years. So it's kind of borderline faith-based experiment, if you want to call it. But some people will get it immediately. Some people who don't care about such things simply go on practicing, you see. The help will come even if you don't want. The influence will come. You are not isolated. You are not alone. So it is impossible that you will not get help. If it happens, that will be supernatural. That will be extraordinary phenomena. Mostly the seeker gets connected to that kind of energy into which he or she is seeking. It's almost guaranteed that you are connected to your gurus and guides. So sometimes very great insights simply flow into your mind, or sometimes the things that you have only heard about will manifest immediately. And the questions that you are struggling with, you get an answer immediately simply by joining with the vibration of higher minds. This happens automatically. You need to be open. How to go higher? Reject the lower. It's very easy. There are only two poles. What do you need to go to the other pole? Well, don't go to the first pole. There is north and south. If you want to avoid south, don't go towards south and you will end up in the north. Is there anything else? Can anything be simpler than this? But people have made it so complicated. That's what we are going to discuss it now. But that concludes the categories really. But if you are interested, I'm going to go into a few traditions that specifically exploit the phenomena and exploit the connectivity between minds. There are traditions that are based on a collective wisdom of higher minds. So they are everywhere in the world actually. And when I say some specific thing, it applies to all the cultures actually. The names will be slightly different, but it is amazing to find the same kind of practices are there in all the continents. Even those places which we thought were isolated, there is no isolation really. There is no isolation. It looks like an illusion of isolation. So wherever you are under the influence of minds. So these gurus and guides, they do not have a specific kind of attachment. They will guide each and everybody, whomever they resonate with. They will send their influence. They're influencing knowingly, unknowingly, whatever. So you will find that these influences, they keep changing, sometimes very strong, sometimes nothing, and so on. If you are in a hurry, if you are impatient student, you may want to systematize this kind of intention making and getting help and progressing faster. If you are kind of scientific minded, you want to have a little bit of control over these things. So what will you do? You will want to have a specific entity contact you. You will want to have a specific group of minds with which you resonate, guide you. You don't want any kind of random, even if they're positive things, you don't want it because you are now focused. You are a result-oriented person. So you may want to get into a specific path. And that path is the path of deities. As soon as I say deity, people start imagining all kinds of things and creatures and, four-headed and two-headed and four-armed entities. Well, these are representations. The mind has no form. Formless things. So, but they have evolved so much that they do take interest in guiding you. Even if you are kind of stupid and don't know anything and you start worshipping the forms, they don't mind because somebody has to start somewhere, isn't it? So most of the time they will be our own ancestors. Now, throughout the millions of years, spiritual evolution keeps happening. It does not matter if you are rich or poor or speak this language, that language, have this much money or that much technology. The mental evolution is independent of all these things. You see, it's a higher phenomena. So throughout the millions of years, people have evolved. Some have evolved greatly. Some are stuck. We are that kind, but some progressed beyond human, and they are our ancestors. There is a connection which is still intact, because everything is connected, so obviously, but this connection is stronger than the other. And if you pay attention, you can find out who your ancestor is, and you can make a conscious attempt to contact that ancestor. It can be one mind, it can be group mind, it can be this mind, that mind. That's the technical detail, you see. Does not matter. May have a name, may have a password, passphrase, and these things are possible. May have a form, may have something specific, peculiar ritual, which is called invoking of that mind. So in India, we have the ancestral entities which people worship, and unfortunately they worship them without really knowing what they are. They think it's some kind of magic which is going to give me something. They worship them like this. So the villagers, the uneducated people, the religious people, all kinds of people are there. They don't know what they are worshipping. They think it is their religion. My mother, father, everybody did it, and everybody around me does it. Makes me feel safe. I'm a part of the big group, so they also do it. But as a seeker realizes, wait a minute, I'm asking for favors from something. I cannot see it. I cannot go there. But I'm asking to be guided. That means I'm asking to be influenced in a certain way. And when they look at the rituals and look at the forms and murtis, images and all, and they should question it. What is this? It is kind of stupidity to worship something without really knowing what you're worshipping. Then if you do this, it's okay. It's a matter of faith now. But if you are a real spiritual seeker, you want your questions to be answered first. Who is this that I'm surrendering to, that I'm opening my mind to for influences? And it will be most of the time an ancestor. The ancestor from which the thousands of people have derived their ancestry. He is the seed for all those people. And that's why it is called Kul Devata. Now, Kul Devatas are so common that one in every home in India. There's one God in every home, their personal God. It is called Kul Devata. Kul means family. K-U-L, Kul. So it is a family God. Usually it will be an ancestor. Sometimes it is something bigger, but it's been established by the ancestors. That is more important, you see. Sometimes you worship the ancestor directly. Sometimes the Kul Devat, Kul Devta, Kul Dev is an entity that was worshipped by your ancestors. And you can imagine now that thousands of people, sometimes millions, will have the same entity. Now, Kul means family, Dev means the light body creature, light body entity. So you can imagine they are like gods for ordinary people. So they have a great interest in upliftment of their greater family, their children, their grandchildren, their so on. And their energy acts in that way. You invoke them, you ask for help, and you will surely get the help. Now, don't think that you want the Maruti car and the car will be there in front of your house next day. It is possible. I'm very careful when I say the word impossible because, what is not possible here? This is a mad virtual reality. Everything is possible here. So don't be afraid of asking for a Maruti car. Probably you'll get a car or you'll get a lesson of some kind because that ancestor or the Kul Devat is interested in your progress, not in providing you with luxuries. Yes, if that particular object or particular relation or particular marriage, that's what people ask, isn't it? So is helping you to progress, then that's what will be arranged for you. It is like in the movie The Adjustment Bureau, there is a group of strange entities that were arranging things for the main character, some things that happened. So you can accept that, you can surrender to that, whatever arrangements they have made, or you can go your own way. So they don't mind. You get the help when you ask. It is not like the negative entities who try to enchant you into their cult because they need you more than you need them. A demon needs a fresh mind more than you need the demon. What for you need the demon? Nothing. But the demon needs you because that's how he's going to influence this world, other people here. So it is opposite in the positive side, in the lighter side, in the brighter side. It is we who need our ancestors, the Kul Dev. How to ask for this kind of communication, if you prefer that word? It's not really communication, it's influences. Now you get the drift. So thousands of people are being influenced by a single mind or a group of mind who have evolved further. They know what is good for you. If you surrender, they will arrange things for you and you will progress faster. It is like riding on a superhighway in Ferrari if you take this path of deities. The only thing is you don't know how to drive the Ferrari. You have never driven on the superhighway and most likely you will end up in a disaster of some kind. This is what has happened. Most of the families, they have lost the favor of their Kul Devta. Their family god is disconnected from the family. It is because they don't know how to invoke, or a more probable reason is they have lost interest in evolving spiritually. They are distracted by materialistic lives. And the good thing about the positive minds, higher minds, is that they respect your will. They respect the will of the individual mind. They will leave you free to do whatever you want. Okay, you want the goods of the material life, okay. You don't want spiritual? Okay, come back later. They are not interested in forcing you. So the initiative has to be from the seeker's side. You must initiate the contact. They are already in contact, you see. They are ignoring you because you don't want them. So you need to initiate the contact. How to do that? Unfortunately, I am not the right person to tell you. You need to go to the elder person in your family. If your elder persons, most probably, they are also materialistic by now. They are running after gold and political power and whatever, you see. Who knows? So you will need to go and find a person who has the same Kul Devta as yours and dig out the proper procedure to contact. And it will be something similar. There will be password there. I'm jokingly calling it password. It's simply 2 or 3 words. Using that, you invoke that entity. And sometimes the image will help because thousands of people since thousands of generations have used that image. The contact is instantaneous. It is like clicking on a link on the Google search. It is like that. So you will get established in the contact of that deity very quickly. Or you can do it in a hard way, find it out using meditation and all. Who is your Kul Devta? If you are really, really interested, if you are a hardcore seeker, then he will make it known that I am here. Okay, ask me what help you want, and then your progress will start. Generally, the spiritual progress is the opposite of the material progress. So don't worry. Don't worry if everything starts falling in your life. Everything that is unnecessary will be taken away. And that is the meaning of spiritual progress, isn't it? Everything is lost. Everything that you thought is you and yours will be taken away. So if you're not sure what you're doing, I don't recommend that you do it. There will be extreme detachment. There will be failure of relations. There will be leaving of jobs, changes of lifestyles. Everything will be arranged for you. It will happen very quickly, sometimes painfully, and so on. So you may start crying one day. Oh no, I asked for help. What have you done? Look at my life, it is a mess. So don't be surprised if this happens. And think before you contact such very, very advanced entities. They know more than you. You don't know, and therefore you will suffer. So it is, the proper way is to contact a living physical master. I cannot emphasize it more. Don't go to the path of deities and all if you don't know what it is. I've seen people mindlessly worship things which they don't know what they are. Because they are minds. Mind is a machine, remember. They have the tendencies. If you ask for help, if you ask, if you say, make me happy, and next day you lose your job, that entity has influenced something, somewhere. The adjustment bureau has done their adjustments. Why? Then you are puzzled. Why has that happened? I just invoked my Kul Devta and asked for happiness. What is this? I lost my job. And probably the job was the reason of your suffering. That's why you lost it. They made it quick. So their knife is very sharp, you see, and cut the attachment. Cut that which is making you suffer. Because the mental connections, the karmic connections are very, very complicated. ordinary person has no way to understand what is happening, and so such things will happen. And you will find people sometimes worship the deities, sometimes they kick them out, they don't want them, they go to some other deity. So this one fulfills my wishes, or that's what people say, so let me try out this deity. Now, what is the use of this thing? It's totally useless. You can see this random worship is, it's kind of useless, stupid activity. Better to become totally materialistic, set up your business, earn the money, get whatever hell you want in your material life. That is the path of an intelligent person. You have desires, material desires, get them fulfilled through material means, hard work and intelligence, rationality and logic, skills, money and power, if that's what you want. Is it not spiritual? That is also spiritual. Nothing is non-spiritual here. So, but if you are not interested in that kind of stuff, then please don't disturb the deities. They yawn at your prayers to get more cars and more partners. They are not interested. And they will do exactly the opposite sometimes, because when you ask for a favor, you say you set the password, you have the image established in your altar. What does that mean? That means you are ready to surrender. You are responsible for the consequences of asking for the influence. When the influence arrives, you cannot complain now. You should not complain. It is your doing. See, they are the energies. They will do whatever they are programmed to do. Sometimes they are made by humans. You see, in the past, the humans were so advanced that they set up this kind of mechanisms that do the influencing things. They have their own intelligence. You can see it as artificial intelligence in the mental plane. They will answer the questions, they will set up things for you, and so on. You think they are minds. So there are many like this. There are many kinds of deities. Ancestral deities is only one kind of deity. They are from the human lineage. There are things that are non-human in lineages. There are things that are artificial. There are things that are mechanical. We don't know what they are, and so we call everything that shines as Dev, as light-bodied entity. Dev is a very broad word. We call everything Dev, isn't it? So this is an interesting thing that whenever a person is possessed by something, some disembodied minds, we call it as possession by a Devi. A Devi is a goddess, female entity. So this is very common in the villagers and places in India, that people get the Devi. Now the behavior totally changes, starts speaking in different language, sometimes looks like an ancient language, lost language, and starts doing things and different kind of actions, activities of the body. But they are not harmful, but they are very, very terrifying. People start worshipping them just because of fear. They display the power and something. Now what is that? Nobody knows. But it can be a demonic entity, can be ordinary entity, can be higher entity. It can be your Kuldev also. We call all of them as Devis or Devtas. We don't know, we don't differentiate because of ignorance. So it's not really necessary to know, but it's necessary to know what is happening. There is a mediumistic tendency there. The mind is too open for all these influences to happen, and sometimes your family gods will take advantage of it to pass on a message. Now it will be very, very tangible message. It's not like a influence in the dream or something like that. It will be proper message. So sometimes you must have heard the stories, at least some people must have witnessed this thing, that the Kuldevta comes into the body of the householder, or it can be a woman, or it can be a child. You see, anybody whose mind is weak and prone to influence, they get hold of it and they deliver their message and they go away, they disappear. Now, you must have done something really, really wrong to invite that kind of trouble, or there must be a real danger to your family, or there must be something really important that this entity had to do this kind of extreme extreme action. So it is seen that this happens. If you are really devoted to the Kul Devta, and you can expect such things to happen. If you are very open to the influence, then the stronger bond is there. And they will send their messages very, very directly. Sometimes it is through dreams, because in the dream, your individuality is gone for a toss. And mind is very, very open. It's very easy to influence and plant suggestions in the dream. So anybody can do it from negative to positive, and the Kul Devta will also do that, will turn up in the dream. Or if you are not that sensitive also, you forget your dreams and you sleep like a log, and then they need to take some extreme measure, and they will appear in different forms. And usually they will take hold of nearby open mind. By open mind, I mean a weak mind, which is easily influenced. Usually it is a small child or a woman in the family, because a man is kind of difficult to influence. So they get hold of something which is easy to influence and deliver their message. Sometimes it can be your neighbor, or usually it is the one who is in the temple. You must have noticed that tantric, or the old man who takes care of the old temple, ruined temple. And he will start behaving in a strange way, and people will start running to you, telling you that some Dev has come into the body of the man in the temple. And you run back and you ask, what is it? What has happened? What made you come here? And they will tell you the message. Now this can be really personal thing, or can be social, like there will be floods in next week, so you need to, all the villagers need to get out of this place. Something like this will be the message. So they take care of their devotees. So this is the path of deities. You need to know the proper way. So my suggestion is, get hold of a really old, older the better, person in your family who knows how to invoke this. Then you experiment, and don't ask for a car by first day. You need to establish a proper relation with the deity, with the Kul Devat. And don't be surprised if you start seeing supernatural activities around you. Now the next one is the Ishta Devta. There's a slight difference between Kul Devta and Ishta Devta. Kul Devta is specific to a family, specific to a caste. And Ishta Devta is another entity, very, very advanced entity, which is expert in influencing greater number of people. So the whole of the culture will be under an Ishta Devta. So usually they are known by the names of the Vedic gods. You see, the Ganpati, Vishnu, and Surya, or all these millions of gods. There are Ishta Devtas. So they don't do such things which the Kul Devtas do. They won't give you cars, or they won't interfere in your marriages and all. Their effect is more subtle. So how to get hold of the Ishta Devta? Ishta means favorite, the one whom you favor. It does not matter where you are in this world. You can cook up your own favorite gods, and they will help you. It is their energy to help. It does not matter what culture, what religion, what race you belong to. For them, you are a mind asking for help. They will do it. So it is very subtle. It is not that tangible. Now, how do I know this? Obviously, I don't know this. I never worshipped any kind of Ishta Devta. Never worshipped any kind of Kul Devta. I'm limited to worshipping, if you want to use that word. I'm kind of highly influenced by masters, gurus and guides. I'm limited to that. But seeing the results, I can confidently say that this can go to this level. There are very great minds out there who are helping millions of people. Now again, they are even more subtle in their approach. Even if you ask them to help, they won't help sometimes, because the distance between a human and the Isht is too great. There is no direct communication there. There is no hope for your message to get communicated there. Although I don't think that they won't see it, they will see it, but they have more important things to do. Like they are kind of very, very general. They will send a vibration of love throughout the community. That's all. Now, if you want the love in form of a partner or a child or a pet or a object, well, it is kind of left to chance. You may get it. But this is biased now. The situation is now biased towards love. So they see a lot of negativity happening, a lot of violence happening, and they will try to influence the situation. And the only thing is they are even less interested in individuals. And they act only when things go wrong in a big way. So it is your prayers will not be heard most of the time if they are petty kind of prayers. So since they are bigger minds and they're group minds, they will try to influence in a more general way. But how do you? There is no harm in asking for help. So how to do that? The same way that you invoke the Kul Devtas, you invoke the Isht Devta also through a password, a mantra, a sound, a prayer, which is handed over from your gurus, from your family, from your creed or religion, whatever. And you do it with the help of an image, or you go to the temple of that Devta. So it is kind of amazing that this comes under the category of deity worship. People think they are gods. They are in a way actually, because they are so above humans. You can rightly call them gods, and there are many kinds. So they each have their own energy. And there are not only gods, there are goddesses. There are more goddesses than gods in the form of Ishta Devtas. It is unbelievable. But goddess is traditionally assigned to an energy in India. So most of the energies, they are feminine in nature because creativity is their nature. So that which creates, gives birth to, is naturally considered feminine gender in spiritual language. So most of them are goddesses, and we call them by the name of mothers. There are so many of them. The Hindi word is Mata or Ma. So there are so many Ma goddesses in India. Everybody has their own favorite. So you will find them in temples. Now, why do we need temples? Kul Devtas, they rarely have temples. If somebody builds a temple, well, it's not really required, you see. They are found inside the houses. They are found in the homes of people. But Isht, they are inside the houses, but they are also in temples, big temples. Indians, they advanced it to such a level that it is almost impossible to build a temple like that now. With advanced technology also. They have taken the art of temple making to the highest possible level. And they spent millions and millions. Temples were made up of pure gold, or at least the top pyramidal structures, they were made up of gold and diamonds and all. So all destroyed by the attackers, stolen by them, and now we are left with only the most ancient, ruined stone temples. But why do we need temple? Isn't that religious? What is spiritual in them? So let us see this. There is no such thing as religion. It is all spiritual, actually. And now it is degraded into politicized religious things. So it has become a survival question instead of spiritual matter. So the practices are the same. It is wonderful to see those practices still the same. It involves pleasing the Isht and taking their influences, being open to the influence of the Isht. So what can happen here if you successfully invoke the Ishta Devta? Well, it is very difficult to say. It is for the greater good. You are not going to get powers. You are not going to get any material success. Or you make it exactly the same. If the Isht needs to perform something through you, he will grant you the power to do that, and suddenly you get the powers. And as soon as the project is over, the powers disappear. Some people think I got the power, I'm powerful, and they are hit by a truck, mental truck. They lose everything. So it can be done to impart a lesson or to carry out something which is their tendency of the greater minds. I'm totally at loss. I cannot tell you what they do. It's beyond human intelligence, actually. So they make changes, they make adjustments. They are so fine, and they are almost unseen by common people, even seekers. So those who are very near to the Ishta, they can see the activity happening. They are influencing the world. Only thing is that their influences are positive most of the time and go unnoticed. You see, let us say there is a major earthquake that is going to hit. They will do some kind of influencing over this force and may protect the country or the whole world. Actually, they are not restricted to countries, so they may try to do that. Sometimes they will bring on an earthquake to get rid of useless people, something like this. You see, they are extremely powerful. That's why we call them gods. So it is unimaginable. I don't claim to know how they work, but the problem is, why do we need a temple? And even over them, why do we need a priest who can talk to gods? Now, in the old times, ordinary people had no way to talk to their Ishta. So they chose somebody who had this ability to communicate directly. And these people, they become priests. Nowadays, a priest is nothing more than a businessman who is collecting money, sitting in a temple. The temple is nothing more than a place, a shop, a business, a shop that sells you hopes, and you pay them, you give them the coconut and ask for $1 million contract in return. The priest will do the job. The priest is happy with whatever he's getting, you see. You gave him 5,000 to send the message, and he will send the message. Is the Ishta hoping for a coconut from you? You see, the coconut is least of his worries. So, and this has become kind of a business. It has become a religion. It has become a means to manipulate. And the ordinary people, the stupid people, and the priests have become kind of manipulators of minds. So you are influenced not by the Ishta, you are influenced by whatever the priest is saying. So because the priest was such an important person in the past, they are now exploiting their position in order to control the masses. This is how religions are born, out of spiritual practices. So it is okay, it is fine. You can go and do that, offer the coconut. The coconut stands for your intention. It is not really coconut. You are kind of making your intention concrete by offering coconut flowers or whatever, money, or doing some kind of ritual. You are making it solid, your intention, whatever your wish is. It is just like signing a contract in a company or buying a property by signing the deal, paying the money. If you don't sign, well, nothing has happened. Your wish is mental only. It's not is not going to bear any fruit. Same way, you see. You give it in a symbolic way, stating that I really, really want this. They are not interested in coconuts or money, anything else. So once this is done, now it is totally up to the Ishta to do whatever they think is best for you. Now, because, it can hit you in any way. Once you make this kind of surrender, do not complain about what happens. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be both, it can be nothing. Who knows? So even though this is a super fast way, it is highly unpredictable because you have surrendered to something else, some other entity who is now directing your evolution. So it is prescribed for those who are not fit for the path of knowledge, who are not fit for the path of actions, who are not fit for any kind of yogic path or energetic manipulations, then it is prescribed. You see, you surrender, at least devote yourself to such and such deity. Choose a favorite one, you see, get the best one that you think is out there, surrender yourself. Once you surrender with a coconut or a banana, then you will be taken care of. Now it depends on your surrender, your intensity of surrender. What happens in your life depends on that. You're totally surrendered, and then the East has no problem working through you. He will liberate you in an instant, you see. So what are the signs of total devotion? Actually, this is not my subject, so I may be inaccurate here. So you can ask any devotee, and the signs are, he sees no difference between himself and the East. He will probably start dressing like that image, you see. It can happen in many, many ways. He will start talking like that. He will read the books that are meant for that god or goddess. He will sing the songs of that god or goddess. He will be extremely blissful all the time. It doesn't matter who dies and who is born in this family. It does not matter. He will be completely detached from the society, family, relations, and he will lose interest in all the petty, lowly things that an ordinary person does, eating, drinking, reproducing, and causing troubles of all kinds. So this kind of person is considered a bhakt or a devotee. And in return, his life will be made very pleasant and smooth through the adjustment bureau. So he need not worry about bread and butter, need not worry about his protection, survival. His ego is almost disappeared, and sings and dances and waits to be taken away. So when the karmic residue disappears slowly, within few, maybe one lifetime, 2 or 3 lifetimes, he merges back into the East. Now you will say, what an anticlimax that is. Because this is what is the meaning of liberation. This is what a devotee is waiting for. The East becomes a means for his liberation. You don't need to do any kind of mantra, tantra or practices or sitting in a cave and kundalini, nothing. Devotee has already, it is done for him because there is no time. A time is an illusion, you see. Once you surrender, it's done. You are freed, liberated. That mind is liberated. So that's why devotion is considered the most direct path. The fastest path there is to liberation is devotion. And the only problem is people cannot surrender. Not in this age. I've never seen anybody who surrendered, but I've heard the stories. The stories are amazing, very eye-opening. What a Jnani Yogi is trying to do is kind of 1% of what the devotee has done. I'm not ashamed of saying it because I'm not a devotee, but I'm still doing it. So it is a direct path. We need to have that kind of surrender in the path of knowledge. I don't say that you drop the path of knowledge and go and sit in a temple, do the bhajan kirtan and whatever they do. No, that will be stupidity. The surrender needs to happen within the path of knowledge. What do you surrender to? You surrender to knowledge. You surrender your ignorance. Instead of offering the coconut, you offer your blind beliefs. Instead of havan of the ghee and the sweets and the rice, you burn up your blind beliefs and irrational behavior. That is the yajna on the path of knowledge. It is very refined, and that is why not everybody can take up this task. The yajna, the havan, the burning, the offering, the happen in mind on the mental plane instead of on the physical. So you can make the path of knowledge as fast as the path of devotion simply by making your isht the self itself. So this is the mechanism of influence by the isht, and although I'm not very sure, I'm going to drop my personal opinions here that there are bigger influences in the life of a human mind, which I don't claim to see. You will never hear the stories also. There are no stories there. But there is some kind of hypothesis here that there are bigger entities, there are bigger groups of minds, if you want to call them. Their description is beyond me. I cannot even describe them, but there is intelligence there. It is not an individual. The individual disappears from human onwards, but they are not even like Kul Devtas, not even like ancestors, not even like the Isht or the famous gods and goddesses of all kinds. They are greater than that. You won't find a temple, you won't find an image of that kind of entity, and I call them the soul discs. Now, what are these things? Well, they are a group of minds which is so huge that you cannot imagine. All these individuals are popping out of the soul disc, and it is a group of causal bodies actually, and all the incarnations are happening out of that. Now, it is so big that we won't be able to understand it. It's a part of greater mind. The greater mind is the universe itself. So our local corner of the universe, one of the universe, is the greater mind. In the greater mind are the soul discs. I don't have a proper word for that. I never saw any Sanskrit word for these things, but they are groups of mind, groups of causal bodies. And you can invoke that also. Probably from a human point of view, nothing will be possible, but there is no harm in making an intention, and you will be taken to the soul disc. It is like a big family. It's like a family of the minds. They are all interconnected, and they know that there is no separation between them. So how are they separated from the universal mind? Through their tendencies, obviously. So a soul disc will have a defined kind of tendency. What is that tendency? Well, obviously it is tendency to evolve further. And probably when the human mind evolves to a certain level, the soul disc will become apparent, not before that. Some people may claim to have contacted, but you see, they have heard some stories, but it looks like they contacted guides and gurus only, who told them about the soul disc. And that is how I also know about, it is like through the stories only, through the experiences of others, there is such a thing. And the East and all the gods and goddesses, they are tiny when compared to the soul disc. So it will have an influence. The soul disc tendencies, they have an influence, is overwhelmingly positive only. Actually, it is so positive that it looks like neutral. It is form of unconditional love, actually. So, but you can still identify them a little bit. And beyond that is another field of minds, which has probably the greatest amount of influence, but it is so much integrated into our minds that we don't even notice it, almost invisible. You must have noticed that as we go higher, things become less and less tangible, more and more mind-like, and when you go even higher, the mind also disappears. It's almost invisible to the mind itself. So that is the greater mind, and the greater mind has the greatest amount of influence on our mind. What is that influence? Well, everything, the living and dying and all the life and all the activities, they are happening in the greater mind. And so what else can influence the mind more than the greater mind? It is like, you see, the greater mind is the sea, and the individual mind is a wave. So what can influence most? The wave, obviously, the sea. So it is where all the boundaries are dissolved. It becomes invisible, but you can ask directly to the greater mind. If you surrender to that mind, then the influences will happen. It is, I call it, living in the flow. Now, I've recorded some podcast about the living in the flow topic, so you're most welcome to listen to them. The flow is obviously the flow of the greater mind, or you can even say universal mind. I don't see any difference between the greater mind and the universal mind. It's a minor technical difference. So wherever the universal mind is flowing, the greater mind is flowing, and if you join with the greater mind, you will be influenced beyond your expectations. That is called living in the flow. Don't need to offer coconuts. Don't need knowledge. Don't need devotion. Don't need the gurus, guides, this spirit, that spirit, deities, nothing. You need to be surrendered to the flow. That is what a liberated person is doing. That is what a liberated mind is doing. A liberated person is no person. A liberated mind has dissolved the mind. This is the most direct way. But then what will you ask when you are in the flow? You won't ask anything actually, because you are in the flow. You are merged with the giver. The asker is now the giver. So there is no asking now. Don't want any favor. And there is nobody there to give you any favor also. No separation from you. So all you can say is thank you. Thank you is the greatest prayer there is. There's nothing greater than saying thank you to the universal mind. Asking this, asking that is like a child crying in a grocery store when all you have is everything. What are you going to ask for? Whom are you going to pray when there is only one? And that one is you. So all you can do is say thank you for this amazing experience that you have given to yourself.
Pure experiences.
You were listening to Pure Experiences by Tharun Pradhan.